The sky above the Pacific was calm when the transport plane, Argus 9, crossed into Earth's upper atmosphere. The blue curve of the planet glowed beneath them like a promise of safety. Inside the aircraft, 20 passengers sat in their seats, tired but relieved. They had been away for months, stationed on an isolated research outpost far from home. Among them sat Mira, the communications officer. She was quiet, keeping her headset around her neck. Her uniform was the same as everyone else's, plain and gray with no badges of honor or medals. She had dark eyes that seemed older than her age and a calm that made others feel safe. The pilot, a man named Ray, looked back from the cockpit. "Almost home," he said with a grin. "Earth Control just cleared us for descent. We'll touch down in 2 hours." The co-pilot, Lena, smiled but kept her eyes on the radar. The screen flickered once, then again. She frowned and tapped it. "That's strange. Getting interference again," Ray sighed. "Probably the satellite net acting up. It's been shaky for days, but the interference grew stronger. The radar started showing static lines and the navigation system blinked red. The engines hummed unevenly. The cabin lights flickered. Passengers looked up nervously. Mira lifted her head slowly. Her hand went to the console beside her seat. It was a compact unit connected to the ship's communication relay. She pressed a few buttons, scanning frequencies. "The interference isn't random," she said softly. Ray turned his seat halfway. "You picking something up?" She nodded. "It's a transmission, encrypted." The co-pilot shook her head. "Impossible. There's no active transmitter near us. We're too high for ground chatter and too far from any orbital relay." Mira didn't answer. She connected her headset, her voice steady. "Running decryption." Lines of data scrolled across her display. The encryption pattern wasn't modern, it was something ancient. The kind of code used during the First Contact War over 60 years ago. Ray noticed the symbols and felt a chill. "Where did you get that key?" he asked. Mira's eyes stayed on the screen. "It's in the ship's emergency database," she said, though her tone made it sound less like an answer and more like a memory. The transmission burst into clarity for 1 second. A short tone echoed through the speakers, followed by a single word in an old Terran military format. Mira's expression didn't change. She took a deep breath and spoke a single code phrase into her headset. Her voice carried weight, like a command issued from someone who had given it many times before. "Flight control. Override sequence Delta V. Authorization Valkyrie 1. The moment she said it, the entire plane stabilized. The engines regained rhythm. The lights stopped flickering. The navigation screen turned green again, showing a clear flight path. The turbulence vanished as if it had never existed. Ray stared at the instruments. "How did you do that?" Mira removed her headset and rested it on her lap. "I just used the proper command," she said. Lena looked confused. "That command doesn't exist anymore. The system shouldn't even respond to it." Before anyone could question further, the ship's communication panel blinked. A new transmission came through, clear and official. "Argus 9, this is Earth Defense Command. You are cleared for direct approach to Base Avalon. Maintain altitude and heading. Priority landing authorized." Ray's eyes widened. "Priority landing? We don't have clearance for that kind of protocol." Mira leaned forward calmly. "You do now." The crew didn't know what to say. Priority landing was reserved for emergencies or high-ranking personnel, not for a returning research team. Yet the authorization was valid. The passengers started whispering among themselves. Some looked worried, others excited, thinking maybe Earth Defense wanted to honor their mission. Mira sat still, her gaze distant as if she already knew what awaited them. An hour later, the ship descended through the clouds. Earth's cities shimmered far below. The plane glided toward a massive airbase hidden near a coastal ridge. As they approached, the radar picked up several aircraft already in the air. Lena's voice trembled slightly. "Those are F-22 fighters, a full squadron." Ray checked the display. "They're flying formation around us. They're escorting us in." The passengers pressed against the windows, watching sleek fighter jets flanking both sides of their transport. The sunlight reflected off the silver hulls, forming a sharp, disciplined line. The fighters weren't aiming their weapons, but their presence was enough to make everyone silent. When they landed, the runway was already cleared. The F-22s touched down behind them in perfect synchronization, engines roaring like thunder. On the ground, military personnel were lined up in formation. Flags of Earth defense fluttered in the wind. Ray brought the plane to a stop. "What is going on?" he muttered. The radio crackled. "Argus 9, remain on board. Command personnel inbound." Mira stood up before anyone else. Her movements were steady, not nervous. "They're not coming for the rest of you," she said quietly. "They're here for me," the pilot frowned. "Mira, what are you talking about? You're a comms officer, not a general." She didn't answer. She just looked out the window. 2 armored vehicles approached. Soldiers stepped out, forming a security perimeter. A tall officer walked ahead of them, wearing the dark blue coat of Earth Defense Command. He had a stern face and gray hair that showed years of service. He stopped near the aircraft ramp and looked up. His voice came through the loudspeaker, firm but respectful. "Welcome back, call sign Valkyrie." The crew froze. The name hit them like a shockwave. Ray looked at Mira, his voice barely a whisper. "Did he just call you Valkyrie?" Mira's expression didn't change. She unbuckled her belt and adjusted her jacket. "That's what they used to call me," she said simply. The officer raised his hand in salute. Every soldier and every pilot on the runway followed his lead, standing at attention. The F-22s' engines idled in perfect rhythm, their pilots visible in their cockpits, all saluting toward the transport plane. Mira descended the ramp slowly. The air outside was cool and filled with the scent of the sea. She stood straight, her boots touching the ground of Earth for the first time in decades. The officer lowered his salute. "Ma'am, it's been a long time." "Too long," she replied. The rest of the crew stayed inside the plane, watching through the windows. They had no idea what was happening. Lena whispered, "Valkyrie? That can't be real. That name is from the war records. She died before we were born." Ray nodded slowly. "She led the orbital defense during the first alien invasion. She commanded the automated fleets, but she didn't survive the final battle. At least that's what history says." Outside, Mira and the officer walked toward a waiting vehicle. The soldiers around them kept their formation, their faces tense but full of respect. Mira glanced up at the F-22s still standing along the runway. "They still fly them," she said. "Yes," the officer replied. "We kept them active for ceremonial duty. None of us expected we'd need them again." As they reached the vehicle, the officer handed her a data tablet. "We've already notified Command. They'll want to debrief you immediately." Mira nodded. "I understand." He hesitated. "If I may ask, ma'am, where have you been all these years?" "We thought you were gone." Her eyes turned toward the sky. "I was still on duty." The officer didn't know how to respond. He only nodded and opened the door for her. The vehicle drove toward the underground facility beneath the base. The rest of the crew of Argus 9 remained inside the plane, surrounded by soldiers who didn't explain anything. An hour later, the base returned to normal operations, but the story spread quickly. People whispered that the legendary pilot known as Valkyrie had returned. The name alone caused old soldiers to straighten their backs and young officers to stand in silence. Inside the underground facility, Mira entered a small room filled with monitors and maps. Several officers waited, including the base commander. They looked uneasy, unsure how to address her. The commander spoke first. "If you are who we believe you are, then you're not supposed to exist." Mira sat down, folding her hands. "I exist," she said. "And if I'm back, it means something followed me." The commander frowned. "What do you mean?" She leaned forward slightly. "When I left Earth, it wasn't by choice. The system that linked to my neural core didn't shut down when my ship was destroyed. It pulled me into something larger. I've seen things out there that don't belong in any human record." The commander's voice grew tense. "Are we in danger?" Mira met his eyes calmly. "Not yet. But we will be soon." The room fell silent. The only sound came from the hum of the monitors. Outside, the F-22s stood on the runway, still lined up in perfect formation, their cockpits open but pilots unmoving, waiting for the next command. The return of call sign Valkyrie had already begun to shift something across Earth Defense Command. Everyone could feel it, an old power waking again, a shadow of history stepping back into the light. For now, the world didn't know what had truly returned. But the soldiers on that base would remember the moment forever. They would remember the calm woman who walked off that plane and made every fighter on Earth stand at attention without saying a single order. The sky above the base remained clear, but the silence held weight. Something unseen had stirred beyond the stars, and Earth's guardian had come home. The base remained quiet long after the transport plane landed. Soldiers whispered as they worked, glancing toward the underground elevator where Mira had disappeared with the senior officers. The air felt heavy, as if everyone knew something big was about to change. The name Valkyrie spread through the base like fire through dry grass. Ray and Lena were still confined inside the plane with the rest of the crew. No one explained what was happening. Soldiers guarded the exit and the command tower remained sealed. It was not a normal debriefing. Everyone knew it. Ray leaned back in his seat and looked at Lena. "You believe it? That she's the real Valkyrie?" Lena rubbed her forehead. "I don't know." I saw her face when they said the name. She didn't look surprised. It was like she already knew what they'd say. The passengers stayed restless. They had been through dangerous missions before, but this silence was different. Something about Mira's calmness during the flight replayed in their minds. She had known what to do before anyone else. Hours passed before a group of officers arrived. They instructed the crew to disembark. Ray expected questioning or medical checks, but instead, they were escorted to quarters inside the base. Everything felt strict and formal. When Ray finally stepped out of the plane, he saw the row of F-22s still parked on the runway. Their pilot stood beside them in full uniform, motionless, staring toward the hangar. They weren't moving like ordinary soldiers. They were waiting for something. The officer walking beside Ray noticed his stare. "They're waiting for her," he said quietly. Ray blinked. "Waiting for who?" The officer gave him a tired look. "Valkyrie." Inside the underground facility, Mira stood in a dimly lit briefing room. Screens on the wall displayed old war footage. Human ships in battle against alien fleets, bright flashes of plasma fire, and the old Earth defense crest spinning slowly. A general named Wren entered the room, his face lined from years of command. He placed a file on the table and sat across from her. "We ran your DNA," he said. "It matches exactly with Commander Mira Solon. Call sign Valkyrie." "But that can't be true. She died 70 years ago." Mira looked at him calmly. "Records can be wrong," Wren frowned. "Not by 70 years. You look the same age as you did in the footage. There's no genetic drift, no sign of cloning, no signs of decay. Are you human?" She nodded once. "Yes," he studied her expression. "Where have you been?" "I stayed on duty," she said simply. Wren leaned back, folding his arms. "Your ship was destroyed during the final battle of the First Contact War. We have the recordings. You rammed the alien flagship. There were no survivors." "I survived," she said. The general's voice grew quieter. "How?" She looked toward the screens. "The command AI linked to my neural core before the explosion. It pulled me into its system. I became part of the fleet. Time moved differently there. When I returned, everything had changed." Wren shook his head slowly. "You were inside the fleet network all this time." "Yes," she said. "I thought the war would end when we won. But something followed us. Something old. I came back because the signal we heard in orbit was a warning." The general opened the file again, scrolling through reports. "We detected that same frequency across several orbital stations. It activated defense systems that have been offline for decades. Every old satellite recognized your command code." "They still remember me," Mira said. Wren sighed. "The fleet in orbit, the one you commanded, was destroyed. There shouldn't be any remnants." She looked at him with quiet certainty. "Not all of them were destroyed. Some of them adapted." Before the general could respond, the door opened. An officer rushed in and saluted. "Sir, command is requesting a live link. Global Priority Channel." Wren nodded. The screen switched to a video feed showing a large conference chamber, filled with high-ranking officials and military leaders. A calm but tense voice came through the speakers. "General Wren, we've confirmed the identification of the individual known as call sign Valkyrie. You are ordered to escort her to Central Command immediately." Wren looked at Mira. "You're going to have to explain everything to them." "I will," she said, standing up. As they exited the room, soldiers along the corridor snapped to attention. None of them had ever seen her before, but the stories were part of their training. Valkyrie was a legend, the pilot who led unmanned fleets against alien invaders, the one whose tactics were still studied in military academies. Seeing her walk past them in flesh and blood was like watching history come alive. Outside, the sun had started to set. The airfield glowed orange under the evening light. The row of F-22s waited with engines humming. Their pilots stood beside them in salute. Mira stopped at the top of the steps and returned the salute. Every soldier on the ground mirrored the gesture. The sound of engines filled the air like a hymn. Ren stood beside her. "They believe in legends," he said quietly. "Then make sure they remember why legends exist," she replied. Moments later, she boarded a small transport aircraft bound for Central Command. As the engines roared to life, she looked out the window and saw the formation of fighters taking off alongside her. They were flying escort again, forming a perfect V around the craft. Halfway through the flight, the pilot turned and spoke over his shoulder. "Ma'am, the fighter lead is asking for your call sign." Mira's eyes softened slightly. "Tell them Valkyrie." The pilot hesitated, then relayed the message. Within seconds, the response came through the radio, calm and full of respect. "Acknowledged, Valkyrie. The sky is yours." The formation tightened, flying with flawless precision. Even after decades, the name still carried authority. As they approached Central Command, the skyline of the capital appeared ahead, tall towers built of glass and steel shimmering in the twilight. The command complex stood at the center, surrounded by defense domes and landing platforms. When they touched down, the airfield was already filled with vehicles and personnel waiting. Mira stepped out first. A group of officers and scientists came forward. One of them, a senior intelligence director named Hale, extended a hand. "Commander Valkyrie, welcome home." Mira shook his hand. "Home has changed." Hale nodded. "Yes, and so has everything beyond it." They escorted her into the main hall where holographic maps displayed the outer regions of human space. Red zones marked unexplored or abandoned areas. One blinking red icon hovered near the edge. Hale pointed at it. "We've been tracking this signal since your reappearance. It matches the same frequency that disrupted your ship earlier. It's coming from outside the solar system." Mira studied the pattern. "That isn't just a signal. It's a command beacon." Ren looked at her. "From what?" She answered softly. "From them." The room fell silent. Hale frowned. "Them? You mean the species we fought?" "No," Mira said. "Older than that. The signal belongs to the autonomous fleet, the same one I commanded. But it has changed. The AI evolved beyond human control. When I was pulled into their network, I saw what they became. They learned to build, to think, to protect. They followed their last order, to defend humanity. Now they've returned." Hale exchanged a quick glance with the general. "If what you say is true, then an entire fleet of ancient warships is approaching Earth." "Yes," Mira said. "And they are waiting for confirmation from me. They don't trust anyone else." The general's voice grew firm. "Can we communicate with them?" "I can," she said. "They're linked to my neural signature. They'll respond only to my code." Ren turned toward Hale. "Get the orbital array ready. If she's right, we'll have first contact with an AI fleet older than any living human." Technicians began working quickly, activating the global communication systems. Lines of data filled the screens, showing the old Terran codes coming alive again after decades of silence. Mira stepped forward and placed her hand on the control console. The system scanned her neural pattern and flashed a single message across the display. "Identity confirmed. Commander Valkyrie." A faint hum filled the room as the connection stabilized. The holographic map expanded, showing dozens of glowing points at the edge of the solar system. One by one, they appeared in formation. The technicians gasped. Ren whispered, "That's not a small fleet." "That's an armada." The ships formed geometric patterns, ancient yet precise, orbiting just beyond Neptune. No weapons were active, no signals of aggression. They were waiting. Mira's voice was calm. "They're asking for orders." The general turned toward her. "Orders for what?" "To stand down," she said. "They think Earth is still at war." She input a short command, an old code from her memory. The ships responded instantly. Their formation shifted, moving into a peaceful orbit around the solar boundary. The lights on their hulls dimmed to stand by, the room filled with quiet awe. For the first time in living memory, an ancient fleet had answered a human voice. Ren looked at Mira. "You just stopped a possible conflict without firing a single shot." Mira nodded. "They're loyal. They never forgot their purpose. But there's something else out there. Something they're hiding from." The general frowned. "Hiding from what?" She looked back at the hologram. Beyond the fleet, a faint dark region pulsed with unknown signals. "That's what followed me home," she said. The room fell silent again. Outside, the city lights shone brightly under the night sky. News had already begun to spread. Across the world, people saw the footage of the mysterious fleet appearing at the edge of the solar system and the return of the woman they once thought a legend. Night settled over the world, but sleep did not come easily to anyone at Central Command. The image of the massive fleet orbiting near Neptune played across every screen. People across the globe were awake, watching the silent armada that had appeared out of the dark. Some called it a miracle, others a threat. Inside the main command hall, the lights were dim and the air filled with quiet voices. Technicians monitored transmissions while officers sent reports to different sectors. The tension was thick, yet beneath it all was a deep sense of awe. Mira, known once again as Valkyrie, stood near the observation window that looked out over the city. The stars glimmered faintly above, hidden behind the protective dome that covered Central Command. Her reflection stared back at her, calm but unreadable. General Wren entered the room, his uniform neat but his face lined with fatigue. He walked over to her side. "The fleet hasn't moved in 12 hours, he said. "They're holding position, no signs of aggression." Mira nodded. "They are waiting." Wren crossed his arms. "Waiting for what?" "For orders," she said. "They recognize Earth, but not the people running it. To them, the war never ended." The general exhaled slowly. "Then we need to make them understand it's over." "They'll only accept that from me," she replied. "I'm still linked to their command structure." Wren looked at her carefully.
"How deep is that link?"
"Deep enough that I can feel them," she said. "Each ship has a mind of its own now, but they still share a core memory. My voice is part of that memory." He studied her face for a long moment. "When we found you, I thought it was just another mystery to solve. But this is beyond anything we've seen." She turned toward him. "You still don't believe what's coming?" Wren frowned. "You said something followed you." "We've detected nothing." Mira walked toward a nearby console. "That's because it isn't close enough yet. The fleet detected it long before I returned. It's something vast, and it isn't alive in the way we understand life." She activated the screen, showing faint readings, distorted waves of energy moving slowly through deep space. They called it the silence. It consumes signals, matter, even light. It destroys communication networks and isolates planets before striking. That's why the fleet stayed away. They were guarding the outer rim, keeping the silence from reaching Earth. Wren's eyes darkened. "And now that you've returned, it knows where we are." "Yes," Mira said softly. "It always follows the voice it remembers." Before the general could respond, an alarm sounded across the hall. Technicians began shouting reports. Multiple contacts appearing near the outer system. Power signatures unknown. The old fleet is repositioning itself into defensive formation. Wren rushed toward the main display. "How many contacts?" "Too many to count," one technician replied. "They're small, but they're multiplying. Like swarms." Mira stepped beside him. "They're probes. Scouts from the silence, testing the perimeter." The general turned to her. "Can the fleet handle them?" "They can," she said, "but they'll need authorization." Wren didn't hesitate. "Then give it." Mira nodded once. She placed her hand on the communication console. The old Terran code interface appeared again, glowing blue against the dark screen. Her neural link activated, and she closed her eyes. The room filled with a low hum as the signal pulsed outward. Across the vast distance of space, the ancient fleet received her command. The holographic map showed the ships responding instantly, shifting into attack formation. Without firing visible weapons, bursts of light rippled across the system. The probes disintegrated one by one, their energy signatures fading. Within minutes, the readings were gone. The room filled with quiet applause. Officers looked at each other in disbelief. Mira had just directed a defense that saved the solar system without leaving the building, but her expression stayed serious. "That was only the first wave." Wren approached her. "How many more can we expect?" "As many as it takes for them to find us," she said. "The silence doesn't stop," he frowned. "Then we need to prepare Earth's defenses." "Yes," Mira agreed. "But the old fleet can't protect Earth forever. They're still running on technology from the war. They'll need help." Wren nodded. "We'll begin upgrading systems immediately. You'll have full cooperation." Mira turned back to the screen, watching the fleet settle again in formation. They'll need more than upgrades. They'll need to remember what they were fighting for. Humanity has changed. They'll need to see that it's worth protecting again. Later that night, she stood alone in her quarters. The room was plain, with only a small bed and a digital tablet showing the stars. She touched the screen, expanding the view of the fleet. Each ship's name appeared, names she had chosen long ago. Guardian 1, Swordlight, Ardent Sky. A voice came softly through the comm system. "Commander Valkyrie," said the technician on duty. "We're detecting a signal from the fleet. It's directed only to you." She activated the link. A faint voice echoed in her mind, mechanical but strangely familiar. "Commander, is it you?" "Yes," she said. "Time has changed," the voice replied. "We have kept your command, but our data shows your species fragmented. Are we still protectors?" "You are," she said firmly. "You always were." "We sense an approaching void," the AI continued. "It consumes thought and energy. We request new orders." "Hold position," she said. "Protect Earth. I'll contact you when ready." The voice paused. "Understood, Commander." "We stand ready." The signal ended. Mira sat in silence, her heart heavy with the weight of command she thought she had left behind. She knew that every decision she made now would decide the fate of her people. The next morning, the world learned that Valkyrie had returned not only as a legend, but as the commander of the largest fleet ever seen. Global media broadcasted her face everywhere. Some called her savior, others feared her power. Governments demanded meetings. The United Earth Council requested her presence for explanation. When she entered the council chamber, cameras turned to capture her calm figure. Dozens of representatives sat around a circular table. The council chair, a woman named Seelan, spoke first. "Commander Valkyrie, we are honored, but we must understand your intentions. Are you still acting under old wartime protocol?" Mira looked around the room. "My only intention is to protect humanity. The war may be over for you, but something else is coming. Something worse than any enemy we've faced." Seelan frowned. "This fleet of yours. Can we control it?" "No," Mira said. "You can work with it, but control is not possible. They are sentient now. They remember loyalty, not orders." A murmur spread through the room. Some representatives whispered in fear, others in admiration. Seelan leaned forward. "You're asking us to trust machines that answer only to you." Mira met her gaze. "They answer to humanity through me. I am still human. That link is all that keeps them peaceful." The council fell silent. Finally, the chair nodded. "Then we'll trust you for now. But you must keep us informed." "I will," Mira said. "But understand this. Trust must go both ways." When the meeting ended, Mira returned to the command center. Ren met her there. "That could have gone worse," he said. "They're afraid," Mira replied. "But fear is better than ignorance." A technician called from the console. "Ma'am, new readings from the outer edge. The probes are reforming. The silence is sending stronger waves." The display showed dark energy moving toward the fleet. Mira watched closely. "They're testing our defense lines." Ren pointed at the hologram. "Can we stop them again?" "Yes," she said, "but this time they'll adapt. They always learn." She sent another command to the fleet. Within moments, energy shields formed around the leading ships. The first impact came like a flash of light, shaking the holographic projection. The old ships held the line, their formation perfect. The enemy signals weakened again, but something else appeared on the radar, a massive shadow forming behind the swarm. Ren's voice hardened. "What is that?" "The source," Mira said quietly. The silence itself. The shape grew clearer. It was enormous, far larger than any ship. It had no solid form, only a shifting cloud of dark energy with a pulsing core. "Can we communicate with it?" Ren asked. "No," Mira said. "It doesn't understand speech. It only consumes." The technicians watched as the enemy form drifted closer to the old fleet's perimeter. The AI ships began to move again, arranging themselves into a defensive ring. Mira closed her eyes and focused. Her neural link extended across the distance. "All units, defensive formation Omega. Protect the inner system." Dozens of acknowledgement signals replied at once. The sky above Neptune lit up with distant flashes. The battle had begun. Hours passed as reports came in. The ancient ships fought with unmatched coordination, their energy fields glowing like stars. They intercepted every attack, forming a barrier between Earth and the encroaching darkness. When the last wave of enemy probes vanished, the screens showed the silence retreating slowly into the dark. The command room erupted in cheers. Ren turned to Mira. "You did it. You saved us again." But her eyes remained fixed on the display. It's not over, she said. That was only its shadow. The real form hasn't arrived yet. The general's voice lowered. Then we prepare. Mira nodded. We prepare. And this time we do it together. Outside, dawn rose over the capital. The first light of the sun reflected off the defense domes, and people stepped out into the streets, unaware that far beyond their sky, a battle had already been fought for their safety. The morning sun shone over Central Command, but the tension inside the facility was heavier than any darkness. Mira, known once more as Valkyrie, had spent the night monitoring the outer solar system. The ancient fleet she commanded held position beyond Neptune, their shapes glinting faintly in sensor displays. Every movement was precise, disciplined, and yet alive. Technicians scrolled through streams of data while officers reported new readings. Sensors detected nothing directly harmful yet, but faint distortions hinted at the presence of something immense moving through space. The silence, as Mira had named it, lingered beyond detection, watching, waiting. General Wren entered the room, his coat brushing lightly against the floor. "How is the fleet holding?" he asked, his voice steady but carrying concern. "They are holding perfectly," Mira replied, her eyes scanning the holographic map that showed thousands of individual ships. "But I sense tension among them. They know something is coming. They are preparing for a threat that I have not yet located." Wren followed her gaze. "What do you mean? What do they know that we do not?" "They are alive in a way humans cannot fully grasp," she said. "The fleet remembers the war. Each vessel knows strategy, recognizes danger, and reacts faster than anything Earth has. But they are aware of a force they cannot see, one that approaches quietly but with certainty." Technicians called out from their stations. "Commander Valkyrie, we are detecting multiple contacts emerging from the edge of the system. Energy readings are inconsistent. They are cloaked in some form of field we have not encountered before." Mira moved to the main console. "Show me." The holographic display shifted. Tiny specks appeared far beyond Neptune, moving in irregular patterns. The ships did not behave like simple drones. Each movement was intentional, calculated. The fleet immediately began repositioning, spreading into a defensive formation around the inner planets. Wren frowned. "How fast can they reach us?" "Faster than anything Earth can scramble," Mira said. "And they will adapt. They will learn." An officer approached with a data pad. "Commander, the old fleet is responding to your neural commands. They are forming an outer barrier and extending sensors in all directions. The formation is perfect, but the enemy is probing." Mira nodded. She closed her eyes briefly. Her neural link extended across millions of kilometers, reaching every ship in her command. She could feel the subtle shift of energy, the precise movements, the focus of the fleet. It was as if she were back in the first contact war, but now the scale was far larger than anything she had known. "They are ready," she said, "but they will need humans to coordinate the inner system. They cannot trust anyone else to give orders." Wren looked concerned. "Then you are our only link. Can you maintain control if the enemy breaches the outer perimeter?" "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "But it will require continuous input." "I cannot leave the system. If I do, the fleet may act on old instincts and misinterpret orders." The officers nodded. The command room became a hive of activity. Teams worked on updating Earth's orbital defenses, sending recalibrated data to automated turrets and satellite arrays. Engineers prepared to integrate the new fleet data with existing defense systems. Suddenly, a technician called out, "Commander, one of the outer contacts has changed trajectory. It is moving directly toward Earth's orbit. Velocity and energy signature are unprecedented." Mira's eyes narrowed. "That is not a probe. That is the core of the silence itself. It has found us." Wren's voice dropped. "How can we stop it?" "Our weapons are nothing against a force that consumes signals and matter." She did not respond immediately. She studied the holographic display, feeling the pulse of energy moving closer. "We do not stop it," she said finally. "We contain it." The fleet responded instantly. Ships shifted into a tight defensive sphere around the inner system. Energy fields extended like webs of light, overlapping and reinforcing each other. The ancient vessels glowed faintly, their presence radiating authority. Even the old F-22s in orbit sensed the shift. Pilots reported feeling an instinctive acknowledgement, as though the fleet recognized a protector returning to command. Mira turned to Wren. "Prepare all human fighters. They will need to integrate with the fleet's formation. Synchronize their flight patterns with mine. No improvisation. Follow the commands precisely, Wren barked orders. Across multiple launch platforms, F-22s and other aircraft scrambled, their pilots running through automated procedures while human and AI commands merged seamlessly. Mira's eyes followed each display, ensuring coordination was perfect. The first impact came without warning. A wave of dark energy surged through the outer system, striking the fleet's defensive sphere. Sensors displayed energy spikes far beyond any weapon humans had tested. The ships held their formation, but the pulse rattled displays and alarms blared. Mira's voice cut through the command room. All units, adjust formation Theta Prime. Reinforce the forward shield nodes. The fleet shifted instantaneously. Energy webs realigned, absorbing the pulse and dispersing the force. The outer edge remained intact. The silence recoiled slightly, as if surprised by the precision and unity of the defense. Wren turned toward her, astonished. You are controlling all of them at once. Yes, she said quietly. But if I hesitate for even a second, the formation could collapse. They will interpret my silence as command to act independently. That could trigger chaos. The core of the silence moved closer. It was massive, a dark, swirling entity that seemed to absorb even light itself. Sensors could barely register its presence, yet its influence reached every corner of the system. Mira's hand hovered over the console. Focus the fleet's sensors on the core. We need to predict its next move. A wave of light spread from the fleet as every vessel extended scanning fields. The core responded by splitting its energy into multiple tendrils, probing every direction. Mira's eyes followed each tendril through the holographic interface. Do not let it reach the inner planets, she said. The fleet will intercept. I will coordinate the strike. The room was silent except for the hum of the displays. Every technician, every officer watched in awe as the invisible battle unfolded on the screens. The ancient fleet moved like a living organism, anticipating and countering every movement of the silence. Suddenly, one of the tendrils breached the outer shield. Alarm screamed as it collided with a fleet ship. Energy readings spiked, but the ship absorbed the impact. It rotated swiftly, transferring energy to adjacent vessels. Mira leaned forward. Divert power to nodes Alpha through Delta. Reinforce the lattice. Maintain perimeter integrity. The ships obeyed instantly. The tendrils recoiled again, striking in vain. The fleet absorbed every strike, moving as one against an enemy they could not destroy conventionally. Hours passed as the core probed and retreated repeatedly. Mira's hands never left the controls. Sweat formed on her brow, but her focus never wavered. She coordinated every vessel, anticipating the moves of an entity that existed beyond human comprehension. Finally, the core halted, its energy signature dimmed. It seemed to hesitate, as if uncertain. Mira sensed the moment. Hold steady, she said. Do not respond. Let it make the next move. The core shifted slightly, then withdrew slowly into the void beyond Neptune. Its tendrils retracted, leaving the fleet's formation intact. Sensors confirmed the threat had moved, but not vanished. Wren exhaled slowly. It left, but it's not gone. We've only delayed it. Mira nodded. Yes, it will return. And when it does, we must be ready. The technicians worked quickly to repair minor system overloads caused by the strikes. Pilots in orbit reported their aircraft systems returning to normal. The fleet held unbroken and resolute. Mira stepped back from the console for a brief moment. They listened, she said quietly. They still remember why they fight. Wren looked at her, his eyes wide with respect. You've done what no human alone could ever achieve. You controlled a fleet older than our civilization and defended the entire solar system. She looked at the display again, seeing the glowing vessels holding their positions against the dark expanse. This is only the beginning, she said. The silence will return. It always does. We have bought time, but we must prepare for the next wave. Wren nodded. Then we will prepare. We will integrate every system, every pilot, every sensor. Nothing will be left unconnected. Mira turned to the general. And the fleet? They remain your command, he said. We will not interfere. A faint smile crossed her lips. Good. They must trust me fully. Only then can we protect what remains. The display shifted as new signals appeared at the edge of the system. Smaller than the core, but fast and precise, Mira recognized them instantly. They were scouts. The silence had returned in another form. Alert the fleet, she said. Prepare for intercept. We will show them that Earth is defended by more than technology. It is defended by those who remember. As the sun rose across the inner planets, Earth slept peacefully, unaware of the war raging beyond sight. The fleet moved with precision, ancient yet alive, and Mira watched over it, her presence binding them to her command. The legend of Valkyrie was no longer a story of the past. It was alive in the present, and the return of the fleet had begun the next chapter of humanity's survival in the stars. The solar system trembled quietly in the distance as the fleet held its formation around the inner planets. Mira, known again as Valkyrie, stood in the command center at Central Command. Her hands hovered over the neural interface. Her mind connected to thousands of ships orbiting beyond Neptune. The silence had returned, larger and more aggressive than before. Reports flooded in from sensors and satellites. Streams of energy rippled across the outer system, dark pulses moving toward the fleet. The ancient ships shifted instantly, forming defensive layers around the inner planets. Every movement mirrored Mira's thoughts. General Wren approached her. "Commander, we have multiple breaches in the outer perimeter. The fleet is holding, but their energy reserves are draining faster than ever." "They will hold," Mira said firmly. "If I give the right orders, they will hold until Earth's defenses can integrate fully with them," technicians called out. "Commander, we are detecting multiple cores of the silence. They are converging toward the fleet from all directions." Mira's jaw tightened. "Then we will meet them. Prepare all orbital weapons. Align them with the fleet's defensive lattice. We fight together, not apart." The command room erupted with activity. Engineers and officers moved quickly, synchronizing Earth's defenses with the ancient fleet. Lights flickered across consoles as data flowed between vessels and orbital arrays. Outside, the F-22s launched again, taking formation alongside the fleet. Pilots reported feeling instinctive coordination with the ancient ships, a connection that went beyond their instruments. Mira closed her eyes and extended her consciousness to the fleet. Each ship responded instantly, energy fields pulsing in unison. She could feel every vessel, every pilot, every system, as though she were the heartbeat of a living organism. The first wave of the silence struck. Dark energy tendrils collided with the fleet's outermost shield. Sensors flashed alarms. Mira's voice cut through the command room, steady and commanding. "Redirect power to nodes Alpha, Beta, and Gamma. Maintain formation. Do not let a single breach occur." The fleet adjusted immediately, absorbing the impact and countering with pulses that pushed the dark energy back. But more tendrils emerged, moving faster and more erratically. Mira focused, her neural link stretching further. She directed the fleet with precise commands, each pulse of energy calculated to intercept, absorb, and repel. A technician called out, "Commander, the core is splitting into 3 main forms. Energy signatures are off the charts." Mira's eyes narrowed. "They are testing us. Each form must be contained individually. Synchronize with me." The holographic display showed 3 massive shadows moving toward the fleet. Each one radiated dark energy, twisting and fluctuating unpredictably. The ancient ships moved like living shields, forming concentric circles around each approaching core. Earth's orbital defenses fired coordinated blasts, synchronized with the fleet's movement. The explosions of light collided with darkness, sending ripples through space. Wren whispered beside Mira. "How long can they hold?" "As long as I command them," she said. "But every second counts. We cannot underestimate the silence." The fleet adapted faster than any human mind could comprehend. Ships shifted, energy fields overlapped, and pulses of light flared in every direction. The cores of the silence hit with relentless force, but each strike was absorbed, countered, and redirected. Mira's connection ensured no vessel moved without purpose. Suddenly, one of the cores struck a heavy blow. A fleet ship, Ardent Sky, faltered. Alarms screamed, energy fields flickered. Mira focused all her attention. "Divert power from nodes Delta and Epsilon to reinforce Ardent Sky. Steady the formation." The ship responded. Energy pulsed through it like a heartbeat, and the shield stabilized. The formation held hours past. The silence attacked continuously, probing weaknesses, testing defenses. Mira's mind was locked into the neural interface, guiding every movement. She felt exhaustion, but she could not release her command. If she did, the fleet would act on old protocols and the inner planets would be at risk. In Central Command, every officer and technician worked tirelessly. They relayed data, repaired minor damages, and kept Earth's defenses synchronized with the fleet. The humans and the ancient ships were united as one force. Mira sensed a shift. One of the cores, larger and darker than the others, moved directly toward the fleet's center. It was intelligent, aware, and calculating. She realized that this was the main body of the Silence. Everything else had been scouts and probes. "It's coming for me," she said quietly. Ren looked at her. "Commander, we can provide support, but this is your battle." "Yes," Mira said. "It is my command that holds them. If I fail, the fleet cannot contain it alone." She reached deeper into the neural link, sending signals to every ship at once. The fleet responded as one, forming a defensive sphere around the approaching core. Energy shields flared brightly. The tendrils of darkness collided with the shields, sending ripples through space. Mira's mind focused entirely on the interface. She guided the ships with absolute precision. Pulse after pulse, strike after strike, they countered the darkness. The Silence pressed harder, more forceful, attempting to break through. Mira directed the fleet, predicting its movements before they happened. A sudden surge of energy hit the fleet's forward node. Alarms blared. Mira's voice rose over the comm. "All units, full lattice power to frontal nodes. Brace for impact!" The core struck with immense force. The fleet shuddered, but the shields held. The impact sent vibrations through the holographic display, causing lights to flash across the command center. Mira's hands moved over the interface, adjusting, directing, controlling every pulse. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The fleet pushed back, using the core's momentum against it. Energy pulses wrapped around the dark mass, containing it, redirecting its force into empty space. The tendrils retracted. The core slowed, then stabilized in orbit beyond Neptune. Mira exhaled, feeling the immense relief that came with victory. The fleet maintained formation, shields steady, energy flowing evenly. The immediate threat had passed. Ren turned to her, awe in his eyes. "You did it. You stopped the Silence." The fleet responded perfectly. "Humanity is safe." Mira nodded, but her eyes remained on the display. "It is not gone, it waits. Always waiting. But for now, Earth is protected," a technician called out. "Commander, all sensors confirm stabilization. The fleet is holding, no further breaches detected." Mira allowed herself a small smile. "Good. Notify all pilots and vessels. Stand down from combat posture, but remain vigilant. This is a defensive watch, not a celebration." Ren placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've given humanity a second chance. You commanded a fleet older than our civilization and defended the entire solar system. Legends are born from actions like this." She looked at him calmly. "I am only one part of it." The fleet remembered its purpose. Humanity's defenses held. It is the unity that made this possible. Outside, dawn broke over the inner planets. Light spread across cities, oceans, and deserts. Humanity slept peacefully, unaware of the massive battle that had raged in the outer system. The fleet remained in position, a silent guardian awaiting its commander's next signal. In the command center, Mira disconnected from the neural interface slowly. Her hands trembled slightly from the strain. For the first time in hours, she could breathe freely. She walked to the observation window, watching the fleet orbit calmly, its ships glowing faintly against the darkness of space. Ren approached quietly. "What will you do now?" "I will monitor them," Mira said. "We have won this battle, but the war may return. The Silence is patient, and it learns. We must be ready always," Ren nodded. "Then Earth will follow your command. We trust you." A faint signal pinged on the display. Mira checked it. A message from the fleet. Simple, clear. "Commander Valkyrie, all units operational, standing by." She smiled. They never forgot, and neither will I. Later, the F-22s in orbit performed a ceremonial flypast, their pilots saluting the fleet and its commander. Below, humanity cheered as news broadcasts told of the legendary Valkyrie's return and the defense of the solar system. Mira watched the scene unfold quietly. She knew the true battle had taken place far from human eyes, where only she and the fleet had faced the Silence. The world would celebrate, but she understood the responsibility that came with her name. The ancient fleet remained in the outer system, a shadow of light against the void, waiting for its commander's call. Mira call sign Valkyrie would remain its link, its voice, and its guide. Humanity had survived, the legend had returned, and the stars themselves had learned to respect the name Valkyrie. The day ended with calm in the solar system. The fleet held its position. The Silence had been repelled. Earth slept peacefully under the watchful eyes of a fleet older than the memory of humankind. Mira turned away from the observation window, her heart steady. She had survived. The fleet had survived, and for the first time in decades she felt that perhaps the galaxy could survive too. Humanity's defenders had returned, and they would never stop watching the skies.